and there's a reason why it's famous. I'm delighted to be here. Indeed, this is one of my first trips since the beginning of the pandemic. And this is a fitting place to talk about the future. I say this because I believe the past and the present of Lisbon and Portugal can be a guide for our future. For centuries, the people of Portugal have influenced Europe in many, many ways, intellectually, culturally, politically. I think, for example, of the enchanting landscapes and mountains of Sintra that inspired some of the world's greatest minds and artists, for example, Lord Byron or Richard Strauss. I also think of the vibrant Portugal of today. You have sporting heroes, you have young tech talents, you're producing clean energy, and you have a perfect mix of tradition on one hand and modernity on the other hand. Or I think of the leading role Portugal plays in Europe and the world at the helm of the biggest European and global institutions. And I also think of how the people of Portugal responded with humility, responsibility, and solidarity when the pandemic hit Europe. I could mention, for example, the online platform called Host a Hero, which allowed people to give health workers from Porto to Lisbon a spare room or an apartment so they could rest and keep their families safe. Or I could mention the historic decision by the government to grant temporary citizenship rights to migrants and asylum seekers so they could access social security and health care. From personal stories of sacrifice to the millions of people that downloaded the contact tracing app, Portugal showed the best of it and the best of Europe. And we all know the pandemic is not over, and there's still a lot of work for all of us ahead of us. Ladies and gentlemen, Lisbon, the city we are in today, is a living example of renewal and recovery. The devastating earthquake in this very spot 265 years ago was a human tragedy, it was a disaster, and it came at a time of great change and progress for Europe, a time when traditions and institutions were being challenged, intellectual freedom was blossoming, rivalries between nations were on the rise. The parallels to today's latest disaster may not be perfect, but history does have a habit of rhyming. I say this because even before the pandemic hit, Europe was already going through a period of profound and rapid change, from digitalization to decarbonization to global fragmentation. And the need for us to get back on our feet today and build a better way of doing things is just as important as it was in the 18th century. The point is, we can learn from Lisbon how to build back better, how to remodel our societies, to harness change and progress. And you see it with your own eyes when you admire Praça do Comércio a living monument of renewal. Of course, times are different and we must do things differently in today's world. And in this spirit, I very much welcome the preparation and cooperation of the Portuguese Recovery and Resilience Plan. Your priorities and ambitions mirror exactly those of Next Generation EU, the European Union's large recovery plan for reforms and investment. And I want to thank you, Antonio Prime Minister Costa, for your support in brokering this historic agreement last July. Next Generation EU allows the Commission to raise 750 billion euros on the market today in order to invest it in a stronger future for tomorrow. That's our game. That's our goal. This is an urgent and unprecedented necessity, but it is for an urgent and unprecedented situation. We need to repair our social fabric. And on this, I very much look forward to the next year's social summit organized by the Portuguese presidency. We need to protect and we need to modernize our single market, which brings so many benefits to the country and all the other member states. We're dependent on it. It's our strength. It's our fortune. And while we do this, we need to press forward towards a fair, a green, a digital, and a resilient economy and society. I know these will be the priorities for the Portuguese Recovery and Resilience Plan, and they are certainly priorities for Next Generation EU. And once again, Portugal is not only well placed to make the most out of Next Generation EU, but it can provide a blueprint for all the others. I give you an example. Next Generation EU will place a strong emphasis on reforms all over Europe. And Portugal has a lot of experience in doing this, from the very difficult reforms of the past to the more recent reforms in areas going from lifelong learning, reforming the healthcare sector, or tackling labor market segmentation to give youth a perspective for the future. And there's, of course, more to do, but what I want to say is that the Commission stands ready to support these efforts in every way we can, from structural funds to the recovery plan, which is Next Generation EU. The second part of Next Generation EU, next to reforms, is investment. Investment in the economy, investment in the society of tomorrow. And here, Portugal also has a head start, especially when it comes to the twin green and digital transition. In fact, Portugal is already a digital leader in many areas, and it is catching up fast in others. Every year, you know better than me, Lisbon hosts 80,000 of the world's most renowned tech professionals at the Web Summit. This is amazing. And as every other major event, this year's Web Summit will be virtual. But Lisbon remains the spiritual capital of the tech scene, without any question. And the fact that so many digital nomads come to work here in startups and to work in tech companies not only reflects the high-quality Internet of Lisbon, but it also is because of the talent drawn here from across the world and the quality of training from specialized university in Braga, Porto, or here in Lisbon. And this bodes well for Portugal, it bodes well for the European digital decade we have ahead of us. To build on this, and this is the foundation we can start on, and where Portugal has a head start. To build on this, we need to invest now, for example, in skills in SMEs, digitalize SMEs, in data, make sure we have a data economy. We should use our industrial data. At the moment, being 80% of the industrial data we collect on an everyday basis are never ever used once. What a waste. So let's use it together. Artificial intelligence, human-centered artificial intelligence, 5G infrastructure. And we need to ensure that the high-speed internet of Lisbon is available everywhere, in rural areas like Marvão or Manzarache, everywhere. So this is an example of how Next Generation EU can help build a better world to live in. And nowhere is this more important for Portugal, Europe, and the world than when it comes to our environment. Portugal is at the front line in the fight against climate change. You know it all. I don't have to tell you. This country is, sadly enough, used to forest fires, but it has been used to these forest fires for years. The difference now is that the frequency and the intensity has increased. And you all know that the extreme weather situations, the frequency and the intensity has increased. And this is only the beginning of climate change. There is an urgent need to act. And the pandemic has only made that more urgent. But it's not only an urgent need to act. There's also a huge opportunity in it that goes with it for Portugal and all those who invest early in the green transition of today. Because if we're going to be successful in fighting climate change, if the world will follow the European example, Portugal and Europe will be at the front line, will be the exporter of technology, of knowledge, of innovation, because we will need those clean technologies. So this is what the European Green Deal is all about. Have a different economy, a more sustainable economy, a circular economy, but also be innovative and be at the forefront of prosperity and growth that is a different growth. That's a growth that gives back more to the planet than it takes away from planet. And this European Green Deal is our blueprint for the transformation of our economy and our society, for the good of the planet, for the good of people, and for the good of our long-term prosperity. The core ambition is for Europe to be a climate-neutral continent by 2050. This is an ambitious long-term goal that needs short-term action now. And this is why, earlier this month, the Commission announced a new target for emission reductions of at least 55% by 2030. This goal, this roadmap, will give certainty and direction that investors need, that entrepreneurs need, innovators need. They need the certainty. They need the clear direction here in Portugal and across Europe. And now we have, with Next Generation EU, the investment into that clear direction and that certainty. We have the plan, we have the roadmap, and we have the investment. From investing in high-speed train connections, for example, to building renovations. As you know, 40% of our CO2 emissions are coming from buildings. So insulate them, renovate them, make them more efficient. The investment is here. Clean mobility, hydrogen, you name it. Next Generation EU will invest in projects that make the biggest difference for each country. And Portugal has always been a front runner in the transition towards cleaner energy. You started your clean transition back in 2005. And today, more than half of Portugal's electricity needs are now met by renewable energy. So you are a shining example that it is doable, that we can make it. And this is thanks to strong government and private sector support. Support for wind, for tidal, for solar and other forms of renewables. Next Generation EU is now an opportunity to strengthen that leadership, to invest in research, to invest in innovation that this country is so famous for. So my message is use it, use it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what Next Generation EU is all about. It gives us a chance to not only repair and recover from the crisis, but to shape a better way of living for all of us. Portugal will be a strong beneficiary of Next Generation EU. It will help boost the economy, an economy that had recovered so well from the last crisis. I really acknowledge that. And thanks to the hard work and to the sacrifice of the Portuguese people. So this progress cannot be jeopardized, but we have to build on and strengthen it. And Next Generation EU will create jobs by anchoring the recovery in the green and in the digital economy of tomorrow. In doing so, we will ensure that no one is left behind, because this transition will only happen if it is fair and just. It must be a fair, a social, and a people-first recovery. And this is why, when people started losing their jobs in the pandemic and the economic crisis, we created the first European scheme for short-time work. We call it SURE. The idea is very simple, and you know it. If there are no orders and companies run out of work because of the paralyzed economy by the pandemic, companies do not have to let their workers go. They can keep it in the companies because thanks to SURE, they can continue to employ them, to keep the skills, to keep the experience, to keep the knowledge in the company, and crucially to keep people in their jobs. And the thought behind it is, you have the knowledge in your companies, and the moment the economy, the world economy, is picking up again, you have the capabilities to say, we can take the order, because we have the possibilities in our companies. SURE is a shield for workers, for jobs, and for companies. And this is real European solidarity in action, and I'm very glad that Portugal is one of the countries that will receive support from SURE. And it reflects the need to strengthen Europe's social dimension and protect the dignity of work. And this is why we will soon come forward with an action plan on the implementation of the European Pillar of Social Rights, and I count on the Portuguese presidency. We will work strongly together in this field. It will be one of the main pillars of your presidency. I know that is a common priority we have. Ladies and gentlemen, the period we're living in is a very difficult one. And that is no different here in Portugal as in the rest of Europe and the rest of the world. The people of this country have shown tremendous responsibility and resilience in the way they have come together to fight the virus. But like everywhere else, people are tired of this fight and they want to move on. Portugal is a country of great explorers. You have a tremendous history in that. pioneers who never feared to venture into the unknown. A country that has always sailed in uncharted waters. Por mares nunca antes navegados, to quote the great Luis de Camões. So I can think of no better country to guide us through the storm and to set sail to our future. And I look forward to just doing that with you, Portugal, with your government, with you, Antonio, and the Portuguese presidency next year. Obrigada, viva Europa.